millions and millions of years ago, a humanoid, half monkey, almost human, had one thought and asked one question, which has formed one of the deepest foundations of what it is to be a human being. Sitting on a rock, content and feeling safe on a nice, warm, lazy afternoon, that humanoid looked out over at the view and had the thought, I'm conscious. And then had the question, what is consciousness anyway? What I find almost as remarkable is that now, millions of years later, our education systems are still hardly addressing that question, what is consciousness? And because of that, we are all stumbling around inside our consciousness, not really knowing where we're going. We're missing an enormous opportunity here. I believe that we should start teaching and learning about our consciousness inside our education systems right the way through our lives, right up until the day we die. So let's start with actually looking at what our education systems do at the moment. I would guess, because you're an intelligent TEDx audience, that you can all read. And you learn to read at school, because that's what schools are there for. How about running? Yeah? I assume most of the people in this audience can run. Who learned to run at school? Has anybody learned running theory at school? One hand went up, and he's the other Australian in the room, along with me. That's right, 2 Aussies. It's a sporting nation, right? And I grew up in Australia, and we had a teacher, in half an hour, he taught us about running. He taught us how our arms move, how to pace ourselves, how to breathe. After I left Australia, I went to different schools around the world. I was nearly always one of the faster runners. Not because I'm built fast or I train a lot or anything. It was because I knew how to run effectively. Thinking. Again, typical TEDx audience. I assume you're all thinking. Are you all conscious? Is there anybody here who is not conscious? Okay, only one person, the Australian, knows. Okay. Sorry, Tim. So, how many people here learned about how your mind works, about how your consciousness works at school? Has anybody here learned that topic? Look around, everybody. There's nobody in the audience. And I think this is one of the greatest failings of our education system. It's like the running example. It's not taught because it's so obvious. We all do it. It's never questioned. Now, it was through painting that I kind of came to this realization of how important this is. So after I left school, I decided I wanted to do product design. And so I hadn't studied art at school, so I was recommended to do a 1-year art foundation class. So I went off to my interview with the college, and the director of the college looked through my slightly thin portfolio, and he said, and I quote, he said, "Tom, you can't draw, but you're motivated. We'll take you." I was like, great, thanks, mate. Anyway, and after that 1 year at that art college, if there's one thing I really learned, it was, Tom, you can't draw. So I gave up all my aspirations of becoming a product designer. I put down my pencil, and I became a salesman instead. 22 years later, I was traveling in Mexico at the time, and I was a bit bored, and I had a bit of paper and a pencil, and I started sketching my surroundings. And something caught in me in that moment, and it turned into a bug, turned into a fascination with ink on paper. So it turned into a similar style of art to this, but it was abstract. So if you imagine this bit of the painting, except this big wormy blob, this is what I was doing. Because, of course, the problem remained, Tom, you can't draw. And I really wanted to draw because this was my aspiration of what a real artist can do. I wanted to be able to do a portrait. So I went to art classes, I read lots of books, I worked really hard on it, and I got absolutely nowhere. Until I came across a book by Betty Edwards called Drawing on the Right-Hand Side of the Brain. And in her book, she speaks about how people learn to draw. So as a child, you start off with stick figures, yeah? And so with your stick figures, and then slowly you add more and more details, fingers, toes, clothes, form, etc. The problem is when you're an adult and you actually want to draw a portrait, you end up drawing your symbol system, not what is actually in front of you. So if you take a nose, for example, most adults will end up drawing what they think the nose should look like instead of what's actually in front of them. So Betty Edwards recommends people to break the thinking pattern and consciously think differently. So what worked for me was that I started speaking to myself. Instead of saying, Tom, draw a nose, I started saying, look at that shape, look at that line going down, look how it curves over the top, how it goes into shadow. And what was, for me, absolutely remarkable is that from one moment to the next, I went from not being able to draw a recognizable portrait to being able to draw a really good quality, recognizable portrait of a person. This moment completely transformed my life. It's given me years and years of pleasure and joy. It's given lots of other people pleasure and joy as well. I normally work in painting performances. So this picture, parts of this picture were painted in a live performance in Berlin, with people coming to actually see this process happening. I've been invited to New York, to Valencia, very, very often in Vienna, where I actually live. So I've got tremendous opportunities coming out of this. I've had tremendous joy coming out of this. And it all came out of consciously changing the way I think. Consciously moving from nose to shape. And it was a tiny change. And the wonderful thing about it, it was so easy. So when a thought emerges from our deep subconscious, it goes through what I would call the how do we think filter before it reaches the conscious mind. Just like impulses coming in from the outside world. It goes through the how before reaching the what. The how filter is an area of your subconscious where you make millions and millions of decisions every split second. So for example, now, looking at all of you, I've got all of this information streaming in. What do I see, hear, feel, taste, smell? I'm processing this. Which bits are interesting? Which bits shall I drop? What from my memory do I call up and combine with what I'm experiencing now in front of you? And all of this is put together, then pushed forward up towards my conscious mind. And when it arrives in my conscious mind, it is this wonderful, rich, full sensory experience full of content and meaning. So, let's put this into perspective for you. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question, a little spelling test. Okay, how do you spell the word thorough? Doesn't matter if you don't know what it means. Can anybody spell the word thorough? Yeah, or another lovely English word, rough. And I'm not talking about what dogs do, not rough. I'm talking about rough sandpaper, yeah? So now some people in this audience will not be able to spell the word. Some people here will be able to spell it. Some of you maybe saw the word written in your imagination. Because with English, you cannot spell English words phonetically, with the sound of the word. You must be able to see it. There you are. And, just in case, that's how you spell the words. There you are. Thorough and rough, or thorough, however you like it. Okay. Now the point is that, goodbye. The point is that good spellers naturally see the word in their mind's eye. Poor spellers stick to an unsuccessful choice of representing the word with sound as opposed to seeing it. It's just like my drawing example. Nose or shape. I think, and from my personal experience, it is substantially easier to change how you think about something, to change your thinking patterns, rather than spend years and years and years hitting your head off the brick wall of poor spelling using the wrong learning strategy. It's pointless, isn't it? It hurts. It does. Yeah, I mean, yeah. And for those of you who knew how to spell the word, but you don't know how, yeah? So you thought, yeah, I can spell that, but I don't know how I got there. What a shame. Because you are missing such a fantastic resource. The problem is that you know how to do it. It's so easy. You're so successful at doing it, you ignore how you actually get to the answer. And that means you can't reuse that successful learning strategy in the future. For example, when you enter a new job and you have to learn a whole bunch of new technical language, or when human resources presents you with the new 6,000-page Excel spreadsheet. Yeah? If you don't understand how you get to a learning experience, you can't repeat it. Learning stays random. Yeah? It's as if you're wandering around in the world and you say, oh, I'd like to learn something. I wonder how I spell the word thorough. And you wander around and it's like, oh, look, there's an amazing tool. You pick up the tool, it's like, you work on your brain a little bit. Yeah, you know, oh, I see the word thorough, wonderful. Well, I don't need that again. Let's throw it away. And you start the next learning experience from the beginning. It's pointless. I think it would be much cleverer to keep this tool, to keep it in our minds, so we can use it consciously at any time. This is why I believe these skills should be taught at school. Now, when I read Betty Edwards' book about these thinking patterns, I had a bit of a head start. I was already carrying the tool. Remember my artist awakening story? Yeah? I left art school and I became a salesman. Yeah? Sales is all about change. Salespeople help other people change. It makes it an altruistic profession where you help people. Kind of. Anyway, and salespeople do this change by understanding how and what you think. So imagine you've got a poster here, yeah, and it's got a chocolate bar and there's a happy family and they're all sharing mouth-watering chocolate together. A few days later, yeah, you're wandering around and you're thinking in your deep subconscious, I want to be happy. And then slowly you go through the how layer of the thinking, making all your decisions. And at some point, there's the connection. Happiness, chocolate. Yeah? And then chocolate, saliva, saliva, hunger, hunger, action. Your decision has already been made. I'd like to put this into perspective, give you an idea of scale of the sales industry. Google. Google's one of many. Yeah, there's Facebook, Twitter, cognitive computing, artificial intelligence, pervasive computing, etc. Okay? Google's business value is built on gathering as much data about you as possible and using that data to understand how you think and what you think about. With that, Google can provide you a better service, predicting your next search, or helping you navigate through the internet. And the interesting thing is the navigation is a series of decisions. It's very close to how you think, how you structure the world around you. Okay? Google can also transfer that knowledge, that understanding of you, obviously, into advertising dollars. Okay? The question is, who is holding the tool? In my artist awakening story, I was holding the tool, working on myself, being able to work consciously with my thinking patterns. In the Google example, I'm handing the tool over to somebody else, allowing them to work on my mind, and I'm probably not even aware that they're doing it. This tool has been, is, and will be misused and abused. There's no question about that. Yeah? Take fear, for example, being scared of something, right? Fear has got two main components. There's one bit of it which is real. It's logical fear. You know, there's a tiger over there. It's kept human beings alive, that fear. And then there's a constructed fear, a not real fear, a fear which, like a lot of people are scared of standing on a stage, for example, in front of an audience. The tool can be used to take away that fear, right? Very, very effectively. The tool is also being used by some leaders nowadays deliberately to take the thinking patterns behind real fear and apply those thinking patterns to the ideas that they want to drive to get you scared about a possible future, yeah? Or maybe the problem's your neighbor, or maybe it's him over there. Maybe he's the problem, yeah? It's you, that's right. What's your name? Okay. Sorry, Manfred. But this is what's going on all the time. So I believe the best protection against abusing the tool is when everybody understands what the tool is, understands how to use it, and understands when it is being used against them. The tool starts with self-reflection. Okay? Because when you start reflecting on yourself, understanding your own thinking patterns and processes, then you are in the position where you can either change those thinking patterns to spell successfully, to be less fearful on stage, or to actually reuse successful thinking patterns as well in the future. This tool can be used in many, many, many different areas. It can be used, obviously, in learning. It can be used in personal development. In my case, I mean, it freed up something which I thought was absolutely impossible and has given me tremendous pleasure actually doing that. The tool is not new, yeah? Ever since that humanoid sat on the rock and realized it was thinking, human beings have been trying to understand what this process is all about. Meditation is prehistoric. Nowadays, this tool and this methodology is being widely used in professional sports coaching. I think it is time that we make this mainstream, that we hand this over to everybody to be able to use for themselves. Because of cognitive and pervasive computing, the power to understand and influence human beings at a very deep psychological level is getting stronger than at any other time in our history. The question is, who is holding the tool? You or them? I believe everybody should hold a tool. I believe that our education systems should pass this over to help people becoming aware of their own unique thinking processes, to help them use that, to help them learn with it and adapt with it. That way we can trigger our full potential.